Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about PC games and the PlayStation 5 because a couple days ago I made a video reporting on a big leak that essentially, apparently internally, Sony is not happy about this PlayStation PC initiative that apparently, just in raw numbers, that Sony feels like putting PlayStation exclusives, especially their single player stuff that sold the most PS5s, they think it's a mistake to put that stuff on Steam because currently the strategy for the last couple of years has been that basically they'd release a game, something big like God of War, and they release the previous one on PC. When Ragnarok comes out, well, here's God of War 2018. Something to sort of be that gateway drug. Here's the first taste. If you want the real one, the new one, the fresh one, well, you got to have a PlayStation 5. Apparently, Sony thinks that this has just been a colossal mistake. So there has now been a big pullback. Sony has actually said, screw PC, there goes all the exclusives other than their live service stuff. We're taking our ball and going home. Now, when I reported on this, I thought it was interesting, but not that world changing. This weekend, people have been mad. I mean, I have now seen about 50 different podcasts from Xbox podcasts, PC podcasts, even some PlayStation podcasts, like legitimately tear their hair out pissed, saying this is a betrayal of PC. Xbox needs to rip all of their games off of PlayStation. I mean, people are going ballistic. And I want to discuss this because I honestly think that Sony's strategy, to me, makes sense. They're making most of their money at this point from the ecosystem of PlayStation. Just every game that sells on PlayStation gives them a 30% cut. As much as it sucks, Sony is making their tens of billions of dollars, not by selling games, but by having games sold for them. Let me discuss and take a look at a bunch of different sources because even the head of Xbox and stuff is chiming in and saying, this is the right choice. Let's break it down. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, I'm actually surprised to see so many people sort of still chewing on this. Typically, it's hard to get a gauge about the internet's backlash because honestly, a lot of these websites now are just so filled with bots and weird stuff. It's hard to tell how much of the rage is real. But when it comes to this one, it does seem like a lot of genuine gamers are seriously mad that they're sort of losing access to PlayStation if they don't have a PlayStation. Sony is reportedly pulling away from PC when it comes to single-player PlayStation games with more focus on console exclusivity. And pretty much all of the replies, we're going to take a special focus to this one here just a second. Basically, everybody is saying that PC is objectively the biggest platform. Like, we don't discuss this much here in America, but there's actually certain sections of the world where getting a console is incredibly difficult. Either the PlayStation Store doesn't actually work in some countries, or buying an Xbox, it may not even come in a language you speak. So almost everybody in the rest of the world, huge chunks of places like China and stuff, there's basically no consoles in China. For the most part, everybody just uses PCs. Not only because you can customize it more, but well, I mean, you can read it, you can play it, right? So a lot of games on PC, there has been an explosion of PC gaming over the course of the last decade that has just been honestly hard to even measure. Some of the stuff people are discussing is like the newest game, Resident Evil Requiem, 300,000 concurrent players. This is actually now immediately the biggest Resident Evil ever, which is saying because every Resident Evil has been pretty dang big, but suddenly the newest one is just the biggest one, and a lot of people think that they pushed and advertised it so hard on PC, as long as how much they've advertising it on Nintendo Switch 2 and PlayStation 5. But some people are trying to claim this is a lie, saying, oh yeah, they've said that in the past, but here's the thing. It would be a disaster if Sony decided to pull away from PC. Sony generates $2.3 billion in revenue every single year. They talked about that in financial documents. Why would Sony want to stop porting games to PC? Even people pointing out the fact that even recently there was talks about this cross-buy. Maybe there was even going to be a Sony launcher. There were some leaks that essentially Sony was going to try and make, where there's like the Xbox app or there's the Blizzard launcher app. There was going to be a PlayStation app. And certain games you bought, if you bought it on PlayStation 5 digitally full price, it would also play on your PC and have not only cross saves, but also cross progressions. You could pop trophies on your PC. I thought this was a pretty interesting idea. It sounds like Sony internally just said, man, a lot of work straight down the drain. Now, here's the thing. Look at this. They're afraid of the Steam machine. Xbox Next Gen will play PC Steam games. This, I do think, is about 80% of it, if I'm being completely honest, which is that some people are sort of saying that the big way that Sony can make even more cash is by diversifying their fan base, right? If there's not just PS5 releasing a new big next-gen single-player game, if you drop it day and date on all platforms, well, if it goes to Steam, that means that people, day one, would be playing a PlayStation game on the new Xbox. They'd be playing it on the Steam machine, and I just feel like that wouldn't look good. But I want to take a look at some of these takes, but I wanted to start specifically with Mike Ibarra. This guy was actually previously the president of Microsoft. He worked at, president of Xbox at Microsoft. And this dude, he not only was in charge of Blizzard, this dude has done pretty much the whole gamut of the Xbox ecosystem. I wish this wasn't the case, but in many ways, it is, and it makes sense. They see this as the last nail in the coffin with Xbox, and the churn is there. Hopefully it turns around. Most importantly, they view Valve as a major new competitor. Valve will be entering the living room and console market with the Steam machine, and likely third-party variants of it also running that Steam operating system. Valve doesn't make many more mistakes, and Sony is smart to realize that. Shipping good exclusive games matter. It's not rocket science. Now, some people are, of course, taking this as a direct jab against Xbox, because when's the last time Xbox dropped a banger exclusive? And I'm being dead serious. Leave it in the comments. What's the last truly banger Xbox exclusive? I mean, I genuinely racking my brain. I can't even think. Hi-Fi Rush, which is not exclusive anymore, and that's pretty much it. What are you going to get? Obsidian games? Like, what are you going to be getting? Like Avowed? I mean, nobody even knows that Avowed is on PS5, right? But I wanted to actually go through this. I've seen some stuff like this. Xbox should consider canceling Halo for the PlayStation 5. I have seen some people that are sort of just discussing the fact that Xbox continues to get into a worse and worse spot, where originally the idea was, okay, they don't have any console exclusives day and date, but, you know, there is still an advantage to having an Xbox. You get Game Pass and stuff. But some people are starting to go, okay, but if Game Pass is getting almost as expensive as buying a game, I'll just buy the game. And if I'm upfront buying the game, at this point, I might as well just buy it on a better platform. Any game that looks halfway good on Xbox Series X is going to look a hell of a lot better on your PC and absolutely insane on the PlayStation 5, right? I get that people are basically saying, look, we have toys too. Let's take our ball and go home. And I just don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle. I mean, I truly think, I have seen a lot of Xbox fans sort of half jokingly, to be clear, half jokingly talking about the idea that basically if there was some way for Xbox to start taking games off of PlayStation, would that really help? I don't think so. I think that Xbox's financials are already so bad. If they took something like Forza or Sea of Thieves, which they admit is making them like billions of dollars on PlayStation 5, I do think that it would hurt them. I think it would hurt them drastically financially, and you'd see studio closures more than you see an increase in sales on Xbox. Everyone has an opinion about Sony pulling back on PC ports for single-player games, and often the reasoning against it is that they'd sell more. Apple could sell more watches if they open it to non-Apple devices, and they won't. Well, why? Because long-term, it would hurt Apple. Exclusivity increases the brand value, and PlayStation is increasing the value of the PlayStation 5, and long-term, they will pay greater for the more sales today on a game. You may not like it, it may not make sense for you. However, this is the obvious move from a business perspective. Nintendo never bent the knee, and they're thriving, which goes against the logical assumption of some champions. I do think this is sort of just the brass tacks. This is the baseline, right? Which is that even if you personally are saying, I only game on PC, every person I know only games on PC, if the games don't exist on PC, they don't exist. Well, you're kind of inside a bubble. I'm just saying that in general, there's a big wide world. And sometimes a lot of us kind of forget the fact that there's a lot of games out there that we sort of forget, a lot of very diehard, very profitable communities that some of us just don't really interact with, so it's hard to realize. You know, if your algorithm isn't showing it to you, sometimes it's hard to realize that all these different, like, bubbles of billions exist. Now, I'm not going to get fully into this. Paris posted a 3.5-minute video that everybody is kind of roasting. I'm not going to dogpile him, but he essentially said that he thinks that Sony doing this is a mistake, because they have the opportunity to increase the money they've been making on PC already. That right now they're making $2.3 billion putting games on PC. He essentially says that they should lean into the PC marketplace. He says that if they just put it day and date, instead of trying to have these delayed releases, he says, like, the example he gives specifically is, all right, say you're putting out a new big PlayStation game and now you're bringing it to PC. They normally bring it 2 years later and it's still full priced. Why would a person buy that? Or why would they buy it at full price? And of course, a lot of this is basically saying, like, okay, you're talking like we care if it's a mistake. The only mistake is you acknowledging it, and that's the real important factor. Your theory is incorrect. If you look at PC sales of PlayStation Studio titles, it's games that have been the longest wait which have the biggest sales. A lot of people are just sort of picking it apart, but I thought this was an interesting thing to kind of end on. Well, I also want to go through this piece here, but let me talk about this one specifically, which is that I do think that, unfortunately, a lot of the gaming space right now isn't about exclusives. It's not about single player. It's about this free-to-play slop, in my opinion, which is that a lot of the gaming industry, the stuff that makes the most money right now, U.S. gamers are not buying games anymore. New study finds. A study revealed that a majority of video game sales are fueled by 4% of players. In 2025, 63% of U.S. consumers are buying fewer games. Now, a lot of it comes down to the fact that AAA single-player games are super expensive to make. They don't last very long. You only need a few per year. And most people just don't play more than 1 or 2 multiplayer games. All exacerbate the fact that life is extremely expensive. And I do think this is a thing, that if it's like, hey, I like buying a lot of games. I buy a lot of games. I review a lot of games. I have a lot of fun with games, right? But I do understand that some people aren't going to be able to buy, the brand new Resident Evil and the brand new Pokemon and the brand new controller. A lot of people are just in a space where they're like, okay, they can only buy $70, $80, $100 of games a year. So are they going to buy one game, or are they going to get a subscription to World of Warcraft, which is $15 a month, and they can play that all year long? Or why don't they just buy a free-to-play game? They buy one skin they really like, and they play that game all year long. Now, I'm not going to claim that's the right path, but I am saying that I think more and more people, as money gets tighter, are making that cost-benefit analysis. Okay, how much new gaming experiences, how much community, how much fun can I have for the least amount possible? And a single-player game that does cost $70, even if it does have the best story and the best graphics, I do think that, unfortunately, there are more and more people, especially young gamers, that are saying they don't care about stories. They don't care about cool, moving, questioning of reality or mind-bending plot twists. They're bored. They're tired. They're working 2 jobs to barely scrape by while taking college classes. A lot of those people are like, I'm just going to play League of Legends. I don't care if it's a good patch or a bad patch. I just want to scrape by. Now, Nib made a huge, giant post. And essentially, his whole conclusion here is he's really breaking down like a lot of the bad assumptions about Paris's video. But he really just points out that financially, Sony is in this spot right now where they made $30 billion with the PlayStation, right? Last fiscal year, PlayStation made 26 times more revenue and 7 times more profits. Again, their ecosystem taking a 30% cut is the moneymaker. PlayStation will literally get 30% of all Resident Evil Requiem sales without doing anything, and they were the one getting the cut over Steam. That's why they're scaling PC consoles back, because it gives people more incentive to buy a PS5 instead. These numbers are undeniable, which is that Sony is just at a point where putting any games at all on PC, or if somehow they were like porting them to phones or something like that, it is a loss leader. And not only that, it becomes a cascade failure. Oh, now more people are not going to know, hey, I have to buy a PlayStation 5. If I want to play any PlayStation game, I have to buy a PlayStation 5. As soon as you start to break that down even a little bit, oh, some Xbox games are coming. Okay, most Xbox games come. Okay, all Xbox games are coming to PlayStation 5. The slippier that slope gets, the more you kind of just get screwed by your own numbers in the long run. This has just been some off-the-cuff thoughts. How do you feel about it? Honestly, the anger about this to me is still rather baffling, but I guess I find the whole debate to be so interesting. Thanks so much for watching this video, gamers. If you could please give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I gotta fix this boom arm. Look at that. I have to constantly make sure I'm not bumping it while I'm filming a video. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.